Yeah, I'm in a very messy environment, so I'm not at the office today, unfortunately. So, uh, uh, well, I think it's can. I'm not really very. No, not well. I can't close the shade, but I have heavy metal posters and stuff like that. I'm not. Well, I think you can see Angus Young with his guitar or behind. Uh, no, it's a candle. It's old style candle holder. Okay, let me try to close the shade. No, 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 no. I was wondering that I had artificial light, and that's what was giving the biggest problem, I think. But yeah, now it's kind of dark, so yeah, not really optimal. I'll try to do better for next time, I guess. Yeah, but no, it's not a desk lamp. It's hanging over here. But if I switch it on, as you can see, it's I switched a different computer, and I didn't think to check the lighting. I wasn't expecting to. Oh wait, let me. Uh, okay, so let me. Okay, I'm trying to share.
No, we are able to see. We're able to see the screen and listen to the music. Although I'm not sure why the voice is going through the screen share.
Okay, and we are live. So, oh, let me let me switch on my camera so everyone in attendance can see me. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I am Massimo Martelli, and I am a researcher at the National Research Council of Italy and the General Secretary of Istvs. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this second event in our 2021 digital event series. So these events take place on Wednesday, and we chose a time to make it possible for all our international colleagues to attend. So midday in Europe, Africa, morning in North America, and evening in East Asia. And in this series, we alternate weekly between informal student-led research seminars and lectures, that is our Terramechanics Bites by established researchers. And today we are kicking off our Terramechanics Bites with a lecture on terramechanics and climate change, with particular reference to the UK by Dr. Alex Keane. So before we start, some quick information. So if you look on the sidebar on the right-hand side of your Hopin page, you'll see a section called Sessions. And in there, you'll find a chat tab. So I would like to invite every one of you to use that tab to introduce yourselves. So typing your name, affiliation, and research interests. And please use the chat tab just for that purpose. Then on the same section, you'll find another tab called Q&A, where you can instead type questions for our speaker. And so please use that tab to type your question. So today the presentation will be around 45 minutes long. And at the end, we will have 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A and open discussion, and with the possibility for those in attendance to be invited to share their audio and video and join the live conversation. So now, that being said, I would like to officially introduce our speaker, Dr. Alex Keane, reading a short bio. So Alex first became interested in environmental issues while an agricultural engineering undergraduate at Newcastle University in the early 1970s. He was particularly influenced by the 1972 report for the Club of Rome's project on the predicament of mankind, the limits to growth. He adapted the systems modeling approach used in this report to analyze nutrient and energy flows in agricultural systems for his Masters of Philosophy research. Interest in environmental sustainability cooled in the late 1970s, returning again in the 1990s and with greater urgency in recent years. He has also carried out terramechanics research modeling traction, tires, suspension, and tractive efficiency. Currently, he is serving as UK National Secretary and Editor-in-Chief of the Resource Initiative for the ISTVS. So Alex, you can take it from here.
Right, thank you, Massimo. I'll share my screen and then carry on. And hopefully this one. Welcome everybody to this Terramechanics Bite about ISTVS new digital series of events. This one is in the form of a lunchtime lecture for Europe Africa, a breakfast lecture for North America, and an evening lecture for Asia Pacific. My lecture subject is how climate change affects what we do and the solutions to this problem that relate to terramechanics. Many of the examples I use relate to what is happening in the UK, but they should relate more generally as well. So the title is Terramechanics and Climate Change with particular reference to the UK. The slow increase in global average temperatures of around 1.4 degrees C since early industrial times, the mid-19th century, is becoming more noticeable in many parts of the world. But a more recent concern is the increasing number of extreme climate change events. Examples include the record heat waves in West North America and Australia, with large jumps in maximum temperatures, such as the almost 50 degrees C in Western Canada. These are often followed with forest fires that endanger people and nature, destroying environments and leaving drought landscapes behind. At the other extreme, higher temperatures above equatorial seas, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean and Pacific Rim, have led to more severe storms. This example is the bridge at Kansai Airport. Many of us crossed it when attending the 2018 Kyoto conference. Not long after, it was hit by a destroying storm, as we can see in the picture. High average global temperatures are leading to ice melt, particularly the Greenland ice sheet, which is melting at present faster than the Antarctic, and the rate of ice melt is increasing. Although the sea rise rate is still relatively low, the effects can be seen, for example, the Mississippi Delta and lowland in Louisiana. This is becoming more invaded and eroded with rising water. Islands in the Pacific Ocean and even in the UK in some coastal estuaries. The cause of these events is now acknowledged as the burning of fossil fuels. The main aim of this lecture is to identify and consider aspects of terramechanics that link to parts of the solutions for the climate change problem and to promote their discussion. It is useful to refer back to the Istvs Mission, which is published on the Istvs website. The Istvs Mission is to advance the knowledge in terrain vehicle systems for improvements in engineering practice and for innovation in the terrain vehicle domain, to promote the transfer of advanced knowledge to the user for the benefit of society at large in environmental protection, energy conservation and sustainable development. I've highlighted the keywords environmental protection, energy conservation and sustainable development. And also the keywords terrain vehicle systems. Hopefully the lecture is linking all of these keywords, and I hope the overall keyword of importance is systems. It's very easy to become focused on small areas of research without always allowing for the overall systemic behavior of what's involved. It's important to stress that this lecture is only part of my point of view. Colleagues may wish to add to this, disagree, inform us of what they are doing, or about their region or country. We invite further discussion and added content in the Istvs Resource Initiative web pages for Environment, Climate Change and Terramechanics, ECCT. The lecture is divided into a short review of the climate change problem, the symptoms, analysis of the carbon cycle, the three main approaches to mitigating climate change and the targets proposed, ways to increase photosynthesis and to increase carbon sequestration, quantifying the scale of actions that need to be taken, peatland, forestry and other demands from land, and implications for food, land use and agriculture. The example of climate change in the UK, the specific challenges in comparison with other areas in the world, a simple food agriculture model for land use needs, and to facilitate evaluating climate change mitigation. Terramechanics and climate change, the use of renewable energy, soil, the main terrain considered in terramechanics, soil management and terramechanics. And finally, a summary of possible terramechanics research linked to climate change. So firstly, a short review of the climate change problem, the symptoms, analysis of the carbon cycle, the three main approaches to mitigating climate change, and the targets proposed. The climate change problem. The main indicators of the problem. The rise in global temperature is shown in figure 1. After some cooler centuries, the global average temperature is shown increasing by the end of the 19th century and rising sharply by the end of the 20th century and start of the 21st century. Carbon, an essential part of all organic molecules, is found in the atmosphere and exchanged to it as carbon compounds such as carbon dioxide and methane. The so-called greenhouse gases include carbon compounds such as carbon dioxide and methane. These compounds have an important role in regulating the Earth's temperature as heat is trapped by the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases also include water vapor, nitrous oxide, and ozone. Greenhouse gases absorb and emit radiant energy within the thermal infrared range, and their concentrations in the atmosphere have an important and necessary effect in regulating the Earth's temperature. Figure 2 shows the levels of carbon dioxide, showing a similar pattern in increase since the 19th century. For the previous 2,000 years, the levels have been relatively stable. Carbon dioxide levels, methane levels, nitrous oxide levels, and sea level rise all show similar patterns. It's worth pointing out that the units for carbon dioxide levels are in parts per million. The units for methane and nitrous oxide are in parts per billion, and the sea level rise is shown in centimeters. Figure 2, global atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, and figure 6, global atmospheric oxygen levels. As carbon dioxide levels have increased, oxygen levels have decreased. This is an important effect on the relative rates of photosynthesis and respiration, part of the natural correction to stable global temperatures. The instability from increasing atmospheric carbon has come from the increase in atmospheric greenhouse gases, rising sharply by the end of the 20th century and start of the 21st century. If there is no action to stop or reverse the increase in global temperature, it is predicted that the rate of sea level rise will increase, along with increased weather instability and the seriousness of severe weather events. Warming temperatures also cause increased methane emissions from thawing permafrost. To evaluate the changes in atmospheric carbon, it is useful to have some understanding of the global carbon cycle. The carbon cycle provides a useful model for analysing the carbon fluxes between the atmosphere, sea and Earth, and evaluating mitigating action at a global and country level. Figure 7 is an example of published data for the carbon cycle. Blue shows the carbon pools, red shows the carbon fluxes, the units are in gigatons of carbon per year. The net balance of carbon to or from the atmosphere will result in an increase or decrease in the indicators in figures 1 to 6. The amount of carbon stored in the deep and intermediate ocean is around 50 times that in the atmosphere. In the Earth's surface, in soil, it is about twice that in the atmosphere. And on the Earth's surface, as plants and trees, it is about 3/4 that held in the atmosphere. The amount held in the ocean surface is similar to that held in the atmosphere. The largest fluxes are photosynthesis, which is slightly larger than the combined soil respiration and plant respiration, at 120 gigatons of carbon per year. Ocean uptake, which is slightly larger than ocean loss, at 92 gigatons of carbon per year. There are also emissions to the atmosphere from deforestation, volcanoes, and burning fossil fuels. Burning fossil fuels is around 7.7 gigatons of carbon per year. Table 1 gives the carbon fluxes to and from the atmosphere that is shown in Figure 7. Carbon losses from the atmosphere, photosynthesis and ocean uptake add up to 212 gigatons of carbon per year. Carbon emissions to the atmosphere, soil respiration, plant respiration, ocean loss, deforestation and land use change, volcanoes, adds up to 208.2 gigatons of carbon per year. There would be an inbuilt correction from this of lowering global temperatures, as seen in past centuries. But burning fossil fuels adds another 7.7 gigatons of carbon to the atmosphere, with net emissions at around 3.9 gigatons of carbon per year. The net carbon emissions of 3.9 gigatons of carbon per year represents a net 0.52% annual increase in atmospheric carbon levels. Measuring the data from the interactive internet source of Figure 1, the increase in carbon dioxide levels in Figure 1 from 1996 to 2018 averaged 0.54% per annum, showing close agreement between the data in Figure 1 and Figure 7. Increased carbon dioxide concentrations appear to increase global photosynthesis compared to pre-industrial times. The cessation of burning fossil fuels may in itself cause an annual reduction of carbon dioxide concentrations by around 3.8 gigatons of carbon per year. This may reduce as the carbon dioxide concentrations also for photosynthesis reduces over the years, closer to pre-industrial levels, when the emission and uptake of carbon dioxide appeared to be close to each other with small annual variations. Substantially reducing the emissions of carbon from the use of fossil fuels would be a significant step towards reversing atmospheric carbon concentrations. Stopping burning fossil fuels would reverse the increase of carbon in the atmosphere. The largest carbon fluxes are the carbon fixed through photosynthesis and the carbon emissions through plant and soil respiration. Approaches to mitigating reducing carbon emissions. There are so far three broad approaches to mitigating climate change greenhouse gas emissions. One, switching to using renewable energy through solar, wind, hydrogen biomass, hydroelectric, wave power, geothermal. Nuclear is becoming less of a preferred option. Solar panels provide flexibility on the size of installation from industrial scale to single panels. The panels on the roof of the farm building shown, around 280 square meters, should provide enough electrical energy to operate a 100 horsepower tractor for 10 hours a day at maximum power, or a 100 kilowatt tractor operating at 75% of its maximum power for 10 hours a day. In the UK, wind power now provides around 28% of electricity demand, mostly sea wind turbines, although land wind turbines are cheaper to install. Hydrogen fuel cells have the advantage that the hydrogen can be produced from renewable energy and the energy stored until required. As part of a hybrid power system, the battery requirement is significantly reduced. At present, solutions for larger on-road and off-road vehicles using hydrogen fuel cells look more likely. Biofuel from algae and seaweed has the advantage that some of the carbon captured can be stored. The fuel energy can be stored, and it allows the continued use of existing internal combustion engines with zero or negative net carbon emissions. Secondly, increase the efficiency in the use of energy, preferably renewable energy. For example, using less energy in heating buildings by using insulation and heat pumps, using less energy in farm operations. Also, manufacturing operations such as cement manufacture can be improved to significantly reduce emissions. Thirdly, changing land use, promoting vegetation, forestry and agricultural activity to store, sequestrate carbon, increase photosynthesis to increase plant, tree and soil storage of carbon and avoid carbon losses through deforestation and other changes in land use, promote peatland conservation and repair. Other environmental considerations include biodiversity, use of chemicals, food standards, food security. Environmental considerations such as flood mitigation, reducing soil erosion and promoting wildlife are also important considerations. These are now included in the development of UK agriculture and forestry policy. There are a large number of official reports in these areas. For example, the 2019 UN report on global sustainable development highlights growing concerns over climate change and biodiversity loss. And the Worldwide Fund for Nature 2020 Living Planet report highlights the loss of wildlife species in the last 50 years. The UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs Sustainable Development website provides considerable amount of advice as well. Reversing climate change may be possible. For example, a proposed 20% reduction in atmospheric carbon dioxide to about 350 parts per million, equivalent to 1980 levels, over 50 years, around 150 gigatons of carbon, is equivalent to about net capturing and storing 3 gigatons of carbon per year. Three possible ways to achieve this reduction are: 1. Reduce fossil fuel emissions to 0.8 gigatons of carbon per year and increase your renewable energy to 87% of current fossil fuel use. 2. Stop carbon emissions due to deforestation and land use changes. Halve fossil fuel emissions and grow forests to store 1.8 gigatons of carbon per year. 3. Stop carbon emissions due to deforestation and land use changes. Halve fossil fuel emissions and increase soil organic matter and soil inorganic carbon by 1.8 gigatons of carbon per year. In the UK, combinations of reducing the use of fossil fuels, growing trees, increasing soil organic carbon and other carbon sequestration measures are part of policy objectives and targets, although much of the detailed action is still to evolve. The restoration of trees remains among the most effective strategies for climate change mitigation. Excluding existing trees, Baston et al. Have estimated there is room for an extra 0.9 billion hectares of canopy cover, which could store 205 gigatons of carbon in areas that would naturally support woodlands and forest. However, climate change will alter this potential, so the global potential canopy cover may shrink by around 223 million hectares by 2050, with the vast majority of losses occurring in the tropics. Allowing for a 50-year period for the forest to mature, this still exceeds the carbon storage in option 2 in the example above. The importance of mixed stands of trees natural to an area is often stressed for promoting biodiversity, wildlife, and other ecological functions, as in the examples below. In option 3, 1.8 gigatons per year evenly stored in the 37.8% of the Earth's agricultural surface is equivalent to increasing the soil organic matter in the top 0.3 meters by 0.009% a year, or 0.46% over 50 years. Is this an achievable target? World land use can be divided into a few general categories, and of particular interest for climate change are agriculture and forestry. Agriculture and forestry make up about 2/3 of world land area, with forestry at 30% and agriculture at 38%. Arable land makes up almost 11% of the world land area, and most of this land will be worked on and travelled over on an annual basis. It's important to note that world peatlands cover about 2.8% of the land area, and this may include some agricultural and forestry use. Peatlands store approximately 415 gigatons of carbon, a similar amount to that stored in all the world's trees and forests, and equivalent to more than 1/4 of all soil carbon. Although peatlands are found in equatorial areas such as South America, the Congo, Indonesia, most peatland is found in northern Asia, northern Canada, Alaska, and northern Europe. Much of the northern peatland is frozen and is becoming very vulnerable to permafrost thaw. The BBC documentary, Climate Change: The Facts, gave this data on global emissions by economic sector. After electricity and heat at 25%, agriculture, forestry, and land use is the second largest contributor at 24%, transport 14%, industry 21%, buildings and other sources make up the difference. A large part of our Terra Mechanics interests are covered by agriculture, forestry, land use, and transport. Environmental emission targets and roadmaps. Net zero emissions. Net zero essentially means contributing nothing to global warming. Carbon emissions to the atmosphere equal carbon absorbed from the atmosphere. If achieved, we are hoping for a halt to global warming, not a reversal, which would restore the equilibrium of several decades ago. Unfortunately, the term net zero seems to have become a cliche for promises or targets without clear action, which in the end may be inadequate anyway. Have we passed, or will we pass, a point of irreversibility in climate change? Where do the international targets come from? COP stands for the Conference of the Parties. COP conferences are attended by countries that signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, a treaty in 1994. COP3, held in 1997 in Kyoto, Japan adopted the Kyoto Protocol, which outlined the greenhouse gas emissions reduction obligation. COP21, held in 2015 in Paris, the Paris Climate Conference, led to a new international climate agreement applicable to all countries, aiming to keep global warming below 2 degrees C, preferably to 0.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels, in accordance with the recommendations of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. The COP25 meeting in Madrid finished with a number of issues unresolved, but an agreement was made about cutting carbon dioxide emissions. Each nation agreed to devise a plan by the 2020 COP26 conference in Glasgow to cut their carbon emissions. Due to COVID-19, COP26 has been postponed to November this year. The UK Climate Change Committee, CCC, which advises the UK government, has reported extensively on the UK 2050 net zero target, the targets for each sector of the economy. And although there is some guidance for national action, some government action and policy are still to be made and clarified. The climate change problem in the UK, mitigating carbon emissions. The UK Climate Change Committee has published detailed data on the UK's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. This figure shows carbon dioxide equivalents per person per year for 2 years, 2017 and 2030. The data is shown for the world, China, India, USA, EU and UK. Current position shows the UK close to the world average emissions per person, with a substantial improvement predicted by 2030. The main greenhouse gas emitters on a per person basis will still be the USA and China. This figure shows annual emissions from the years 1990 to 2016 for the 8 sectors: surface transport, industry, buildings, power, aviation, shipping, agriculture and land use change and forestry, waste and F-gases. The main improvements in the UK have come from power, industry, buildings and waste. Agriculture, land use change and forestry in green have made a smaller contribution to reducing emissions. The Climate Change Committee has made predictions for 2050 greenhouse gas emissions in the core scenarios compared to 1990 and 2017. Our main interest is likely to be in agriculture and forestry, so we'll just concentrate on that area. The UK Climate Change Committee 2019 Net Zero Greenhouse Gas Scenario for Land Use and Agriculture. Land use. This focuses on afforestation and peatland restoration. Agriculture. This focuses on healthier diets, reduced food waste, tree growing and low carbon farming practices. The code benefits from all the scenarios due to improved air quality, healthier diets, more walking and cycling, green growth and industrial opportunities. Much of the detail is still to be determined, although the government is trying to introduce an environmental land management (ELM) scheme, which encourages farmers and landowners to do public good for public funds, for example, for increasing soil carbon or organic matter and for increasing biodiversity. The UK has less than 0.9% of the world's population, and not including the British Overseas Territories, the UK area is less than 0.18% of the world's land area. On either a population or a land area basis, the UK contribution to mitigating global greenhouse gas emissions will be relatively small, but as a major economy on a total gross domestic product (GDP) or GDP per person basis, and as a member of the G7 Economic Council, the actions to combat climate change are important, particularly as the UK has one of the highest population densities of the countries with developed economies. Agricultural, arable and forestry land use for the world, UK and Europe. UK has a high density of 257 people per square kilometre. This is around 5 times greater than the world average and about 8 times greater than the European average. 73% of the land is used in agriculture. This compares to 38% for the world and 22% for Europe. And this reflects in 12% of the land down to forest, compared to 30% for the world and 45% for Europe. Looking at the demand of land for food, compared to the rest of Europe, the UK has a high percentage of agricultural land, a low percentage of forestry, and a high level of food imports, at least 40%. Countries that import food have been seen as exporting part of their climate change emissions problem. One way to investigate the use of land is to model the national needs for agricultural production and identify and quantify how agriculture, forestry, and other land use can contribute solutions to the climate change problem. A simple food land model for the UK. Population 66.5 million. The diet is assumed to be cereal-based. Food energy, 2,250 calories per day per person. Production potential from the 5 grades of UK land is considered, and grades 2 to 3 is used. Cropland and production required comes out at 13.6% of the UK land at 5 tonnes per hectare. The land left for grass and animal production and forestry comes from grade 5, 4 and some grade 3. At present, a considerable area of land is used for growing grain for animal production, a major cause of the more than 40% food imports. A simple model suggests that a diet with less meat could significantly reduce the agricultural land required for self-sufficiency, allowing more land to be used for forestry and carbon sequestration. Terramechanics and climate change. Land use is heavily driven by agriculture in the UK. Agriculture uses 73% of land in the UK versus 22% in Europe versus 38% in the world. As stated, there are so far 3 broad approaches to mitigating climate change greenhouse gas emissions. For approach 1, switching to using renewable electric energy, hydrogen and biomass. In the UK, locally produced solar and wind energy are quite feasible. Hydrogen solutions and algae biofuel solutions are probably slightly less feasible in the shorter term. It's worth remembering that a lot of vehicle solutions have been tried before. The first hybrid car built was by Ferdinand Porsche back in 1899. It used a gasoline engine instead of a battery pack, and it supplied power to 2 electric motors in the front wheels. This 1959 Alice Chalmers farm tractor uses fuel cells. The tractor was equipped with 1,008 individual cells and could haul 3,000 pounds. The output was 15 kilowatts of electricity. This more modern Deere tractor can deliver 174 horsepower of continuous power and run for 4 hours on a 3-hour battery charge. John Deere are also developing autonomous tractors, and the market is projected to reach around 50,000 units by the year 2027. although the source doesn't indicate what the makeup of the units will be. Types of autonomous farm equipment include driverless tractors, agricultural drones, and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, agricultural robots, and autonomous harvesters. New hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicles are being developed. This New Holland hydrogen fuel cell tractor NH2, this information was from a number of years ago, and it's not quite clear what's actually happened to the vehicle. Mercedes are testing fuel cell lorries, and in this example, the lorry is using two 150 kilowatt fuel cells with additional batteries. So this type of unit could possibly be used in larger agricultural vehicles as well. Terramechanics and climate change, cultivation, soil health, and organic carbon. The use in the UK of large diameter, low pressure front tyres and rear rubber half tracks to provide low sinkage and low slip traction at high tractive efficiency is now common. There is in the UK a trend towards less ploughing and more minimum tillage, and the focus should probably move from traction to tractor efficiency and the efficiency of cultivation operations. The top example shows a single pass machine with a combination of tines, discs, and a roller prior to drilling. The lower example shows minimum tillage and drilling combined in one pass. Although there has been considerable research into tines, discs, rollers, soil cutting, there has been little modelling of cultivators combining several different soil manipulation processes. Minimum tillage, or min-till, also called conservation tillage, reflects the intention to reduce tillage compared with ploughing systems. Unlike ploughing, minimum tillage is a tillage method that does not invert the soil and has the goal of minimizing the soil manipulation necessary for successful crop production. Strip tillage extends the idea further, and inter-row cropping with legumes to provide nitrogen and increase soil organic matter provides a further challenge. Precision planting techniques, such as those used in the system of rice intensification, which entail wider row spacing, are options to explore. More recently, concerns over the loss of carbon from ploughed and bare fields has brought into question the use of ploughing where it can be avoided. The main limitation with minimum tillage methods is that they often rely on the use of herbicides to control weeds. The potential use of wider rows, inter-row cropping with legumes, and precision mechanical weed control is still to be evaluated. The efficiency of much of the use of cultivation techniques and agronomy and organic matter management is still unknown. We focus on the mechanics and the performance of agricultural tractors carrying out field cultivations, including implement forces, force transfer between tractors and implements, real and virtual hitch points, traction prediction, and the determination of tractor efficiency using two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, and how a control or field management strategy can be implemented to maximize tractor efficiency. There's poor availability of modern tractor field performance data in the public domain, and aspects such as the dynamic variation of weight transfer and weight addition from ground working implements to tractors are not fully documented or evaluated in published research. The development of electric powered tractors and the move to more precision minimum tillage provides a major opportunity for terramechanics research and the mechanics and the performance of these agricultural tractors carrying out field cultivations. How will the change to electric power and drives affect the control and delivery of energy to soil engagement processes? The focus on carbon capture and storage requires a more sophisticated view of soil properties and behaviour. The measurement and evaluation of the cultivation process before and after the tractor pass requires sophisticated instrumentation, requiring real-time spectroscopy and evaluation of the long-term effects on soil organic matter. Soil. Soil has been the main terrain type dealt with terra mechanics, and historically, a main terra mechanics concern has been the engineering properties of soil strength, mechanical properties, the effect of moisture, particularly those properties that affect vehicle mobility, soil cutting, and manipulation. More recent concerns with climate change are highlighting soil ecological services, its ability to absorb and store carbon, its ability to resist erosion, and its ability linked to surface vegetation to hold water for reducing and managing flooding, and its ability to grow food in an environmentally sustainable way. Gibblewhite et al. Have stated that the major challenge within sustainable soil management is to conserve ecosystem service delivery while optimizing agricultural yields. They propose that soil health is dependent on the maintenance of four major functions: carbon transformations, nutrient cycles, soil structure maintenance, and the regulation of pests and diseases. Mitigating climate change through carbon sequestration and improving agricultural yields are mutually supportive. Increasing soil organic matter is one of the ways to improve soil health and fertility. At a practical level, the Agricultural and Horticultural Development Board has been developing a soil health scorecard for common indicators: pH, routine nutrients, bulk density, and penetrometer resistance. Less common indicators: visual evaluation of soil structure, soil organic matter loss on ignition, respiration, and earthworms. New indicators: total nitrogen, microbial biomass carbon, potentially mineralizable nitrogen, DNA measures, e.g. of pathogens, nematodes, and microarthropods. Techniques such as real-time near-infrared spectroscopy have made major steps forward in the data collection and processing of soil analysis. Further terra mechanics research opportunities that follow from the UK Climate Change Committee recommendations. The development of soil-related mechanisation with a prime aim of improving soil health and increasing soil carbon content, particularly soil organic carbon content. Precision cultivation techniques and precision weed control using the potential of automation, robotics, and artificial intelligence in situ and on machinery sensors to monitor and control performance and management decisions. The use of winter legume cover crops, strip cultivation methods, inter-row planting, spring cereals, etc. Spring wheat with a prior overwinter cover crop of legumes, clover, reduces fertilizer leaching over winter and reduces the need for nitrogen inorganic fertilizer. Incorporated as a green manure, legumes promote carbon storage. Also, for the farmer, the disincentive may be lower yields, but spring cereals are more likely to benefit from precision sowing methods. The use of electric-powered machinery and prime movers, tractors, loaders, harvesters, etc. For terra mechanics, this supports the development of electric-powered vehicles using renewable energy, including the development of drivelines, wheel drives, and their control. Potential to increase photosynthesis levels from agricultural cropping and forestry. Soil management potential for carbon storage and sequestration. The significance of soil erosion on the loss of soil carbon. The potential to increase photosynthesis levels from agricultural cropping and forestry. Soil management potential for carbon storage and sequestration. The significance of soil erosion on the loss of soil carbon. Peatland restoration. There are proposals from the UK Climate Change Committee recommendations for peatland restoration. This could provide some terra mechanics challenges. Much of the UK peatland is around and even below sea level. The risk of carbon peatland erosion to the sea is high as sea levels rise. Forestry. An increase in the global area of trees has emerged as one of the major mitigating strategies. The increased global profile of environmental protection of forestry terrain, automated planting and harvesting, and forest management should provide increased terra mechanics research opportunities. This will include forestry systems that maximize carbon capture, maintain biodiversity, minimize soil erosion and soil damage, and improve flood control. Utility vehicles, increased weather uncertainty and increased occurrence of flooding and terrain and infrastructure damage will require development on specialist manned and autonomous vehicles for disaster relief. The demand and economic importance for smart service vehicles to service and install land and sea renewable energy installations should increase. Controlled traffic farming. Uncontrolled traffic in fields has been shown to lead to the majority area of the field being traversed by wheels in a crop production year. An aim of controlled traffic farming, CTF, is to ensure that during mechanised operations, wheel travel takes place in the same wheelings, thus reducing the potential of soil compaction damage affecting crop growth. This can be achieved by matching wheel widths for vehicles and trail machines. The spacing of tracks is often determined by the width of harvesters. The repeated use of the tracks leads to compacted, high-strength soil with a high coefficient of traction if required and low rolling resistance. Because the crop growing area has minimum disturbance from machinery, the soil structure and drainage improve, reducing the crop risk during drought and heavy rainfall. There is a good iAgri lunchtime lecture on YouTube by Tim Shaman on controlled traffic farming. Examples of new UK agriculture. Paludiculture. This combines reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from peatland through re-wetting with continual land use and biomass production. Regenerative agriculture focus on topsoil regeneration and health in increasing biodiversity, improving the water cycle and increasing resilience to climate change. Conservation areas. There's an increase in the use of conservation areas around the edges of fields and even through the middle of fields to promote biodiversity and wildlife, and particularly to promote pollinating insects such as bees. A question from me. Can we design small Terramechanics robots to look after small-scale organically farmed plots? Many individual farmers in the UK and around the world are embracing ideas and change for a long-term sustainable environment for which a clear acceptance and path need to be shown. Other considerations such as biodiversity, use of chemicals, animal welfare, wildlife, availability and use of fresh water, flooding, etc. also need to be included when considering the environmental impact of what is done. Two last examples. The one on the left is the restoration of wetlands, and the one on the right is the use of clover as a winter cover crop. Conclusions. A combination of a switch to the efficient use of renewable energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, carbon capture and storage using trees and soil organic matter is becoming a major part of the accepted approach to mitigating climate change. The biggest action to reverse climate change is to stop burning fossil fuels. The use of biofuels from algae may produce hydrocarbon fuels that have a net zero carbon emission value. These biofuels may extend the lifetime use of already existing IC engines, and also they do not compete for the use of high value farming land. Other areas where Terramechanics can help mitigate the effects of climate change include electric vehicle technology will quickly dominate new vehicle sales and already are in some areas requiring research in off-road vehicle drives designed to match electric power and changing demands. Recharging and battery technology are important, Hydrogen fuel cells are likely to become an important part of hybrid vehicle technology, particularly as part of energy storage and saving weight batteries and recharging time. More research is required on how off-road vehicles will interact with soil and promote its carbon content through crop operations, more land greening, precision automated operations, and vehicle management, such as controlled traffic farming that limit terrain surface damage. The performance of minimum tillage cultivations and tractor performance needs more study. The use of artificial intelligence and automation allows the use of small driverless vehicles with low axle weights to carry out precision sensing and weed and pest control. It is necessary to consider soil health in a wider perspective rather than primarily its soil strength and compaction properties. The further development of in situ, real-time and remote sensing to monitor and manage soil health is needed, particularly the use of spectroscopy to measure and log soil properties. Forestry and an increase in the global area of trees has also emerged as one of the major mitigating strategies. The increased global profile of environmental protection of forestry terrain, automated planting and harvesting, and forest management should provide increased terra mechanics research opportunities. Peat restoration conservation has emerged as one of the major mitigating strategies, and improved peat re-wetting and peat management in agriculture, leisure and wild areas is important. Managing thawing permafrost may become a major issue that relates to terra mechanics. Vehicles and machinery to support coastal protection and coastal carbon capture and storage, seagrass, could become important. There are hard decisions to be made about food security and diet, land use and environmental objectives. How land is managed and used as a multi-use resource should be part of research objectives in terra mechanics when terrain management is considered. There is considerable scope for more research, particularly of a more multidisciplinary nature involving engineering, soil science, agronomy and forestry. Agriculture industry business groups such as the UK National Farmers Union have already set more demanding net zero carbon emission targets than the national government, and more demanding targets of reducing atmospheric greenhouse gas levels close to pre-industrial levels are also argued for. Increasing numbers of land managers are developing environmentally sustainable practices, including biodiversity and nature generally. Science will have to respond quickly to help achieve timely progress. There are several areas I would have liked to have looked at in more detail, including restoring peatland and managing thawing permafrost. But there are ISTVS members who know more about this than I do, and we would like to hear from them and add content to the resource initiative pages around this subject. As much as me answering questions next, I would be as interested in hearing the audience's views around opportunities for terra mechanics for climate change mitigation, what is happening in their part of the world, funding opportunities, etc. Thank you for patiently listening.
Okay, Alex, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. And before jumping to our actual Q&A and live discussion part of this event, just for the fun of it, I would like to share with all of you the registration stats for today. So out of the 25 total registrations we have a bulk from South Africa leading at 8. So they are the winners of our friendly competition here, and congratulations. And runner-up, United States with 5. 2 people from UK, and then one from a set of different countries, including Australia, Brazil, Japan, and Italy. And well, I have to say, I'm very glad to see people registering from all time zones, from the west to the east. So and seeing quite a decent registration figures and attendance figures, I would say, for our brand new series. And I would just like to remind you that now you have 2 options to participate to the discussion. You can either type your questions in the Q&A tab, as we have already said at the beginning of this stream. And I see that some questions are already in, and then I'll leave it to Alex to begin answering those questions. But also, you have the possibility to join us live on screen to ask your question and to share your thoughts and make your comments. So in this latter case, which we strongly encourage, all you have to do is click on the share audio and video button, and a moderator will approve it and let you in. So please keep asking questions, and please join us here live on screen. Thank you, Alex. Now I'll leave it to you for the actual Q&A part.
Okay, thank you, Massimo. I had a quick look at the question tab, and I think Carl Becker, if Carl is still there, he probably asked the first one, and he was asking what the effect of the 2020 COVID shutdowns would have been on emissions. And unfortunately, I don't have quantitative data, but it was widely reported at the time that the lack of use of vehicles improved air quality, and some people heard a great deal more wildlife, particularly bird song, for the first time, and they felt that was a large improvement in their quality of life. Unfortunately, since then, traffic, certainly here in the UK, has almost returned to what it was before, and a lot of those benefits that we did have, including the clean air, seem to have actually gone backwards. But I don't know if Carl is still there, but he would like to join us. We'd be pleased to see him. And I think a second one was Ray Kruger was asking if there were papers that would justify fundamental research in terramechanics, how that would be justified with climate change. I hope to a certain extent that some of that was an early question, so I hope that some of that was answered in the later parts of the presentation. If you remember, one of the slides showed my analysis of a tractor system with its effects on soil, its tractive efficiency, performance, and so on. And that sort of research has not been done a great deal. It's tending to take elements of terramechanics, fundamental research like traction, tractive efficiency, force analysis, and so on, and then trying to combine those into a whole vehicle model in the way it's interacting with the environment. The areas where we have not a great deal of knowledge is what the effects of what you're doing to the soil in terms of compaction, cutting it, turning it over, whether those operations are affecting the long-term effect on carbon storage, losses, etc., within the soil. So generally, I think there's probably quite a lot of sitting down and thinking to see how those things will link up, and possibly trying to sort of find more fundamental research which has got more relative purpose with the actual problems that we're trying to solve at present. Climate change is not a decades-long activity. It's something I think most people would agree we have to find solutions quickly. So we're not looking at starting a research program over 15 years to try and find something about sort of cutting soil or something. We're looking at trying to use the information that we already have and trying to apply it to solve problems that need to be solved within 5 or 10 years. I don't know if that helps, Ray. If you want to join us, you're welcome. Have we got any more? We've got another one from Bongani. What is the consensus in industry on using biofuels to combat climate change? To use natural habitats converted to... Well, the natural habitats is... I think that was one of the points that I'd like to try and sort of make. A lot of biofuel up to now, including in North America, has been at the expense of good farming land. So in other words, farmers have been encouraged to, instead of growing, say, maize for food, they've been growing maize for fuel, biofuel. And that means that there is less land for food, the cost of food goes up, and it also causes lots of problems in terms of sort of monoculture and so on. But the examples I was using of algae and seaweed don't compete for good quality land for food. And in fact, it's quite easy. If you think about it, there may well be a lot more salt water around in 15 to 20 years' time. And a lot of that salt water could be used in coastal areas and transported to barren areas where it could be used for promoting seaweed, which could be used as a fuel. I know at present there are some experiments off the California coast where there are experiments of farming seaweed underground. And in the UK, there is quite a lot of interest in seagrass, which can store, surprisingly, maybe up to 25 times the amount of carbon that crops such as forests and so on can store. So the use of seaweed and seagrass for storing carbon and recycling it looks as though it may be quite promising. There's plenty of seaweed, there's plenty of sea around, salt water as a resource, and there is plenty of waste products from human activity which can be used as a feed for the plants. The same applies to algae. The image that I used was the sort of thing that oil companies have been doing, particularly in the States, of investigating algae as a potential replacement for fossil fuels. The main reason that they don't follow it up is largely because of profit and cost. And if you then add in the extra benefits of reducing emissions and also possibly using some of the carbon saved to add to land in storage, you can end up with collecting carbon out of the atmosphere, putting some of that back into fuel, so that the carbon emissions are less than net zero, and some of the carbon can also be used as land improvement. So in some areas, it could be well possible to use algae and seaweed and to try and improve soils and the long-term fertility of ground areas. Probably a slightly longer answer than I was expecting. So I think that's the last one we've got on here. So is there any other questions or anyone who would like to join us?
Well, while we wait, hopefully for someone to join us, I'll go ahead and ask a question myself. You showed several references on your presentation. Is there an organized and comprehensive list of those references made available for all those that are interested in this topic?
Yeah, most of the information that I've used in this presentation has come from my Canada conference paper, the Canada conference in September. And quite a lot of the topics which I've picked, there is actually rather more detail in the paper than I would have been able to include in the presentation. Most of that is referenced either by name or number or both. So what I can do is use the reference list from the paper and put that into the resource initiative area, the climate change and Terra Mechanics pages, and those numbers should match up with the numbers and the names that I've used in the presentation. So the answer is yes. We have a reference list, and I'll put it on the resource initiative pages.
Okay, thank you very much. And okay, so I see someone is joining us on stage. I see Mohit. Please, Mohit, welcome.
So I had one question. So you, in the presentation, it was the importance of organic soil carbon was highlighted. So
Yes.
could you also tell us about the relevance and like possibilities of increasing inorganic soil carbon?
Okay. Well, I'm not much of a soil scientist, although I did do a little bit of soil science at university many years ago. But most of the soil that the carbon we're adding is in the form of organic material, so it's organic soil carbon. But there is also inorganic carbon in soil. And there are various ways that can be added. One of them is using what's called biochar. Now, biochar is almost, well, it is an abbreviation for biological charcoal. And some of you may have actually seen in the countryside people who make charcoal. Sometimes it's on an industrial level. When I was very young, back in the 1950s, we used to have people who went around the woods and they actually made charcoal and then sold it for cooking and so on. And essentially, if you take organic material and better still, if you've got wood, any wood will do, and you basically cook it in a closed container so that there is no air. Charcoal makers used to pile the wood up and then plaster mud or clay around it so that the oxygen couldn't get into it. So if you cook wood, then you end up effectively with charcoal and byproducts. Byproducts will include some carbon dioxide, but obviously a lot less carbon than there is in the wood or organic material you start with, and also some other sort of almost you might call it contaminants, which may need to be disposed of in various ways, but that would be a small quantity. So effectively it's charcoal, and charcoal, if you add that to the soil, can last for a very long time before it is degraded and ends up going into the atmosphere. So it's one of the ways. So for example, if you, in this country, we're now being encouraged, or landowners are now being encouraged to grow trees. So when these trees get larger, what are they going to do with them? One of the things they might do with them is to actually turn the trees into charcoal if the price of wood is not very good. And then they'll get paid for putting the charcoal into the ground to increase the carbon content of the ground. So the ELM scheme, which I mentioned in the presentation, the Environmental Land Management Programme, which our government is now using to support farmers and landowners, it's in an early stage, but it will be encouraging farmers to grow trees and landowners to grow trees. It will also be encouraging farmers and landowners to increase the carbon content of the soil. And one of the easiest ways to do that, if you grow trees, is to turn the trees into charcoal, produce biochar, and add that to the soil. And it will have a certain amount of benefit from a fertility point of view, as well as storing more carbon. So that is one of the sources of inorganic soil carbon. There are others, but they're probably less of a topic at the moment to go into.
Thank you, Mohit. And well, I see. Well, we have a lot of people still on the stream, and I see Skalk. Hello, Skalk. Would you like to join us on screen? We would really like to have a chat with you if if you're willing to do so. of course, we don't want to we don't want to force you. And I also saw that another question was typed in the chat. Oh, I see Skulk coming on.
Ah.
Hello.
Hello, Skulk.
Hello, can you
Good
hear
to
me?
see you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
no,
see you and hear you.
I don't have a specific question, but I just want to make a comment. And the paper that you presented today, Alex, is not what we would normally expect as part of thermomechanics, but I think it's an eye-opener. I really enjoyed the presentation and the content because it forces our researchers that are often get stuck in our little bits of our own space to just think of what the implications of what we do are in the bigger context. So I think it's really nice to just get this different perspective and also sensitize us that we must always keep the reason why we do things keep that into consideration. It's not about soil or about tractors or equipment or clean energy. It's about creating a sustainable environment for all of us for the long term. And whatever we do in research should always keep that goal in mind. Is that we are trying to make for a better world and a safer world and a more efficient. Thank you for this. Also involved with Istvs for many years. Thank you also to all of you who drive this initiative. It's one of the things that you'll see the number of people from Africa or from South Africa. From my side, I've encouraged my team to really join this effort. I think it's a great effort. It's a very important effort, and we really hope that the message will spread and more people will join this and then interact. I think it's really important for the society, but also for our own personal development and broadening of perspectives. So thank you very much for this effort.
Well, thank you very much, Skalk, for joining us and for your nice comment. And I just realized I called you up on stage and I didn't do a proper introduction. So for those of you who are not familiar with him, Professor Skalk Els is professor at the University of Pretoria, South Africa, responsible for the vehicle dynamics group, and he is also deputy General Secretary of the ISTVS for Europe Africa. So thanks again, Skalk, for joining us on stage today and give us this nice ending to our discussion session. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, just a question, Scott. In your area, which obviously there's a lot of wildlife and nature around you, do you see very many changes in recent years from either increasing temperatures or changes in weather patterns? Is that something people are particularly aware where you are, or are you in a more sort of slightly sheltered area?
Alex, it's an interesting question because up to end we would have agreed with a whole climate change, a global warming thing, because we're supposed to be in the middle of winter, but we had minimum temperatures of 8 to 10 degrees and maximums of 21 to 25. So it was warm. But yesterday a cold front struck us. So for the first time this winter we saw zero. I even think -1 degree Celsius. So I think the world here is back to about normal. But yes, up to last week, I believed our temperature was definitely significantly higher than previously. But
so, is it becoming more variable? Are you seeing more highs and lows?
Yes, I do. It's not warming; it's climate change. So we definitely see. Some years much warmer, other years. So that change is evident. So South Africa is, from an agricultural perspective, are basically a large part of our country is arid. It's dry. But rainfall where we live in Pretoria is about 600 millimeters per year. Don't know how many is, but in inches, about 240, 24. So most people will say you can't farm, you can't do dryland farming. So we are, most of our country, very large part of our country is not agriculture friendly from that point of view, and we also don't have large numbers of large vegetation, huge forests. It's difficult to say what the real long-term effects will be on us.
Yeah, I mean, some of the images we've seen from Australia in last year with the damage to the heat waves and then the forest fires, and we're seeing the same again in Western North America. That really is looking quite frightening, and it looks as though, because we're relatively early in the forest fire season, it looks as though that may even get worse over the coming weeks. So that really is a bit of a worry, because if I think the maximum temperatures in Canada, they jump something like 4 degrees. So if we get any more events like that, and unless people have got air conditioning, it's going to be a very, very difficult place to live at certain times of the year.
Yeah. So I think the message is clear. The world has a problem, and we have to rethink everything. We rethink our own personal decisions, where we travel, how we travel, what we do. What we research, especially as part of the community, we must refocus our research and do things that are really, really important, not nice to us, but things that consider spending more effort on things that can really make a difference, that can really change, and not only produce papers, but produce ideas and concepts that we can implement and help mitigate the situation.
Yeah, we've got a major report coming out tomorrow on advice on what we should be eating for the next decade. So that may impact quite a lot of people. I don't know, but we'll have to see what they come up with.
Okay, good. So it looks like we are getting to the end of the time we have allocated for today. So before
thank you, Skulk.
Yeah, thank you again, Skulk. So before we wrap this up, I would like to sorry, let me reactivate my screen share just for a second. And so I would like to thank again Alex for his great lecture, and all the staff at ISTVS that is contributing to make these events possible, and of course every one of you attending today and providing your insight, your questions, and your comments. And before we all go, please allow me 2 more minutes for some final announcements. So on the website that you see here on screen, you can find all the information you need on our upcoming events in the series. So you can find schedule, speakers, and registration links for all the events in the series. And the page is being constantly updated, so please keep an eye on it. And next week on Wednesday, July 21st, we are having our second student. So sorry, let me go back here. So we are having our second student research seminar, and as you can see, we have 4 more scheduled for August and September. So I would like to invite all the student research groups out there to join us in this initiative and consider being our next speakers, and so you can take advantage of this opportunity to provide an informal look at your research work. And if you are interested, as I hope, please email me at this email address over here. That's gs@istvs.org, and we'll arrange to get you in the schedule. And once again, I really strongly encourage any student research group out there to consider this.
Yeah, just a quick thank you, Massimo, to you and Jenna and to Mohit for all the work you've done on getting all this underway, and the help in actually getting me onto the screen and pressing the right buttons. So thank you for all that effort as well.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure and our pleasure to do so. And I think we did a nice event, so I'm very, very satisfied about it. And to conclude our announcement, on Wednesday, July 28th, at the same time as today, we are having our second Terra Mechanics Bite with the title Terra Mechanics Models for Lunar and Planetary Rovers. The lecture will be given by Dr. Lutz Richter, and it's going to be a good one. So make sure you subscribe to this one as well. And finally, as you know, this series of events, besides being its own thing, is also our build-up to the ISTVS conference that is taking place for the first time online this year from September 27 to September 29. And at the link that you can see on screen, conference.istvs.org, you can find all the information you need. And one quick note, early bird registration rates end tomorrow, July 15. So if you haven't registered yet, please hurry up to get your discounted rate. And now I think that's really it. So once again, I would like to thank every one of you, and see you soon at our next event and at the conference in September, of course.
Right,
Thanks again, everyone. Cheers, everyone.
All right, thank you, Massimo.